What's up, bitches? Welcome back to another episode of Positively Uncensored, your favorite reality TV and interview podcast. It's your host, Leah.
Are we still watching Married at First Sight? Is this a new show called Love and Loathing? I think there's some confusion here. The couples are draining. 3/4 of them are ready to call it quits. Should have been broken up before. Experts? What experts? I don't even know that we see the experts on screen for a cumulative total of 10 minutes this season. Where's the experts? I'm excited about this transition to Peacock and them cutting out the fluff, but at this point, have we cut out too much? I barely understand the couples. We're already at decision day by episode 13. And as stated, the appearance, we've not seen Dr. Peppers once, okay? And Pastor Cal and Dr. Pia, we've seen them for maybe 10 minutes on our screens. Anyways, welcome back to another episode of Positively Uncensored. As you can tell, today I'm going to be diving into Married at First Sight episode 11. Before we get into the episode, a reminder to like however you're listening, whether Spotify or YouTube. Please like the video, engage, leave a comment, make sure that you're subscribed and those notifications are on. Thank you to every single person who's went over to Spotify and Apple and helped me combat some of the negative reviews that I've gotten from, quite frankly, Karens. I so appreciate your reviews. So if you haven't yet left me a review, now's your reminder to do that as well. Episode 11 starts with the end where Brittany was crying at the couples table and removes herself to go to the bathroom. With some encouragement from the table and Megan, Will decides to be attentive and go and check in on Brittany. He comforts her, tells her that he wants this, wants to be with her, and eventually she comes back to the table. And the next thing that we see is later on them playing a game of truth or drink. Now, in regards to Will going to check on Brittany, I don't think that he would have went to check on Brittany if it weren't for the instruction or the pressure of other people at the table. And at this point, I'm not really sure what that reason is. Does Will not care? Is this just his personality? It's hard to tell because when he applies himself, he's saying the right things. He's being comforting. He's being validating, but needing that extra oomph of encouragement from people who aren't in your relationship and didn't take an oath to Brittany has been like a consistent theme this season. Now, I'm not to say that at times I wish that Brittany might hold her tongue, but I think that Will kind of sets up this behavior to happen. As stated, after this, Brittany returns to the table. The couple sit down to play a game of truth or drink, and it's obvious that Brittany has been crying and also that this isn't the time to sit down and play a game. It felt very unnatural. The questions were awkward. I don't know that Brittany participated once in the game. I wish that they would have just let her and Will and the other couples do something else. And it just didn't feel like anybody was in a good enough spot in their relationship really to play this game. With that being said, I didn't take any notes on the questions in the game because I didn't think that that was that important. After the game, later that evening, Brittany and Will are in their bedroom and they're talking about earlier. And Brittany's thoughts is that she felt validated having other people sit there and affirm that she's not crazy, that how she reacted and how she received Will's comments of their emotional connection could be better, etc., was correct, was pretty on par, right? And for Will, he's telling Brittany that he thought it was helpful to hear from the others. This is a moment where I'm like, we have to take it when we can get it, especially spoiler for episode 12 if you've watched episode 12. I feel even when I watch Brittany and Will embrace each other or like they're having a good moment, it's just really hard to sink into that because a lot of what we're seeing is arguments in their relationship and it just feels like we're walking on eggshells and waiting for the next thing to come up. We move over to Belinda and Chad's apartment, and they are having a conversation about how each of them decompresses from the day. And Belinda's essentially expressing that she feels lonely with Chad's decision to unwind by himself, watch TV, and that she wants the two of them to unwind together. They're sitting in bed having this conversation, and Chad expresses that he's just not comfortable in this apartment. He can hear the sounds of everybody in their apartments. He's used to living in a house. Aside from that, when he gets in the bed, her dog Lovey is on top of his legs and taking up the space. And he doesn't want to offend Belinda because she obviously has her own routine with Lovey and she loves her dog, right? But he's uncomfortable. I think Chad should have expressed this earlier. However, I understand him trying to be accommodating to the thing that his wife enjoys. I don't think Belinda and Chad are going to work together. And if they, for some odd reason, do decide to stay together, I absolutely don't think that this is going to be a long term relationship. And I think that they have a lot of differences. And yes, I do think that part of it is just the discomfort of this experience and Chad being outside of his comfortable environment. Other parts of that, I think, is Belinda's sort of seeing how Chad is when he's not able to control a situation or have things go according to plan. And I think that she doesn't like that. Now, there are some more thoughts I have about Belinda and Chad, but we'll get there in just a few minutes. The next thing that happens is all the couples begin to head back to their apartments and leave this couple's retreat. We check in with Brittany and Will, who are on the couch, and she asks him what he does when he's frustrated. He says, I work out, I pretty much keep to myself, I sleep. What do you do? And I understand that Brittany is trying to condense, trying to get to know Will, because number one, he doesn't necessarily share things about himself on his own. Number two, this is a condensed experiment, so she's really trying to understand him. But at least from the edit that we are seeing, it can't help but feel like Brittany needs to take a piece from Megan's book in terms of, do you remember how much Megan kept saying, I want to keep things light. I want to keep things light with her and Will's relationship. Sometimes I wish that Brittany would just be, and everything doesn't have to be like this intentional intellectual conversation about understanding each other. What about just sitting here and asking, what's your favorite cartoon character? Like there's just needs to be a balance in things. And I think that we're really seeing that because Will isn't expressing issues in the relationship, that Brittany feels uncomfortable. And like that's like a lack of effort or a sign that he's not really invested enough to even care. They're just not on the same page. Not my next note being about Mary and Meredith. I must have things. Oh, okay, here we go. Okay, we see Belinda FaceTime Jalen to tell her about Chad's issue with filming, including her in text to productions. Jalen is basically like, oh my God, he shouldn't do that. He can speak for himself. He doesn't need to include you in this. And basically that's a red flag. At this point, I'm a little bit annoyed with Belinda and Jalen, and mainly because this might sound rude, but at the expense of it's just us, this is positively uncensored. I'm going to say how I feel. I would feel better if Jalen was asking her mom for advice because she's younger, she's her daughter. It's feeling almost like Belinda coming to Jalen for her advice. It's a little bit backwards. And of course, people of all ages need support, but they're like two in there. When I was minorly open to the fact that they were both on the show together, because I've thought that it was weird the entire time. I thought it was weird. I thought it was cringy. I thought it was cheesy. I think we're engagement farming. Yeah, I think it's strange to put a mother daughter pair in there anyways. But the only way I could have seen it work is if Jalen was sharing some concerns that she had about Josh, and she has her mom there. She's not being pressured to do things. But that's not even how this experience has panned out. Like Jalen, we'll keep going. We'll keep going. Right, right. Belinda and Jalen, I see a lot of people turning on them. I'm not upset with either of them. I don't think that they're 100% the problem. I think that the dynamic of them being mother-daughter and what we're seeing happening, I think it's just a little bit frustrating, and it just doesn't necessarily feel like Married at First Sight. It feels a little gimmicky. Now, Megan and Derek go to lunch, and you can tell that she's already tired of keeping the secret of their pregnancy. She feels like she's showing. I'm not sure what Megan was getting at with this conversation, if she wanted to tell everybody sooner. Derek expressed the fact that they're just waiting until a certain amount of weeks before they share the news with everybody. Although in the last episode, I believe we saw them break the news to her parents. If not, then we'll be getting there in just a couple of minutes. Will and Brittany go to lunch, and she decides to fly out Will's mom, which was very kind, for his birthday. And Will's mom gives the advice to give each other compliments so that it's not always badgering. She also says that at times Will can take things personally. So there needs to be a balance between them, like I said, meaningfully complimenting each other, but also bringing things to each other's attention. Will, in the moment, feels seen by Brittany, planning a small surprise for him and taking note of the things that he would enjoy, and also just including his mom. As we saw earlier in the season, Will is at least more emotional and more himself when he's around his mom. I thought this was a nice surprise. I thought that this was a nice conversation. I think that we're seeing a little bit of Brittany's inexperience in relationships. I get why she wants to hear feedback from Will, but again, I'm just wondering how things would have panned out in their relationship if she interpreted that as him giving her grace versus him not being invested. I personally think that Will probably may have acted similarly, but I'm just interested to see how the conversations would have gone. We check back in with Belinda and Chad, who are going to lunch. I believe they're at like a sushi place with that has rotating dishes for them to choose. And he says that he had 6 meetings, saw a friend, and I thought that we were about to go in a positive direction and that Chad was just going to accept the fact that they're filming and they signed up for a reality TV show. And he ends up delving into the fact that him and his friend talked about how he is just absolutely done with this show, done with the bullshit. And he feels like he's being treated like a child. He feels like the way that they talk to him is very patronizing. He said he is a combat veteran who's accustomed to being in charge, and he doesn't like this experience. He also said he's tired of rearranging and accommodating his schedule for clients. And Belinda basically responds to Chad and said that she's not bothered and she doesn't care if they have to move the schedule. And Chad conveys that he feels like they're trying to drive a wedge between all of them, him, Belinda, Josh, Jalen. A couple of things about this scene before I continue into what happens next. It is uncomfortable, the fact that it's always uncomfortable when there's someone who talks about somebody in the room as if they're not there, right? There are some times where we break the fourth wall, and it's interesting to see. Chad borders the line of it being uncomfortable. And again, I get it. It has to be frustrating to have your schedule revolve around filming. There's thousands of millions. There's tons of moving parts, right? Like you have to coordinate, can this location accommodate filming at this time? Are the cameras available? Is the lighting team available? Has everybody taken breaks? No, they haven't. Okay, everybody needs to be able to take a break before we film for this. Oh, one other couple ended up filming long. There's a million things that are happening between these couples and the various locations they're at. So I understand the behind the scenes. I also understand that it's hard not to personalize things, but that's what Chad is doing. He's personalizing things. On the flip side, I thought Belinda's reaction, and I'm just going to be very honest, was a little bit odd. I understand the fact that Chad is making things uncomfortable and she doesn't like how he's expressing himself or really just how he's treating production, who is simply just doing their jobs. She doesn't like that. You can be dismayed at the situation without being disrespectful. So I understand all of those things. Now, adding in the fact that Belinda is almost like a bit gung ho about filming. Like this is the second time where she, and I get it. She committed to this process. They both did, but it's starting to feel like you're prioritizing your time on camera more than you're prioritizing the longevity of this relationship and it making it outside of this experience. Is it about if the two of you can sustain filming and the pressures of this experience to then navigate in the outside world? Or is this about you getting as much screen time as possible because you already know what your decision will ultimately be on decision day? It's just starting to feel, I'm not going to do a 180 flip on Belinda. I just want to acknowledge it's a little bit odd. It's possible that both of them are wrong, right? So, and to add, once Chad starts talking about how he feels like they're trying to drive a wedge between himself, it's interesting how Chad, similar to Derek, isn't able to express things without bringing other people in or other factors in to back why he should feel vindicated to be upset. And he basically wanted to rile Belinda up. Like, what do you mean you're not upset? Okay, you're not upset about your hair appointment or my work schedule, but aren't you upset about the fact that they are driving a wedge in your daughter's marriage? And to be fair, Josh and Jalen are Josh is driving wedges in their relationship himself. But there is an element, if we're being honest, that yes, the filming, the pressures of that, the production sitting there and prompting certain conversations, like all of that certainly can drive a wedge in the relationship as opposed to it occurring naturally on the outside. So that's the thing about Chad. It's not that he's like completely wrong, but he's also not correct. Okay. Chad says that he loves Belinda, but effing hates this show. And yeah, like I said, I think that Belinda would have backed him more if she felt more sure that she wanted to be with him. And I'm not saying that she's wrong for how she's perceiving the situation, because I do think there's something to be said about if he's not being respectful to production who's doing their jobs, would he be respectful to valet? If somebody dung his car and it wasn't their fault and they bring it back, would he be respectful to service workers? Like there's just an extra line of question with that. And then we add in the flag of it all. But Jalen does some painting and meets with Josh's friends. And this was strange because the two of them have to make such a natural thing unnatural. Like it's almost like because of Josh's hang up on what community is, now Jalen doesn't know how to hang out with people. And maybe this is how they do things, or maybe they have to do an activity because they're on Married at First Sight. But they go painting, and at some point, the friends ask what hobby they have in common that crosses over. And the way the two of them sat there in crickets debating, who cares? What if you guys are vastly different? What if he was a brain surgeon and you were an artist? What if the parts of you that cross over are the parts of you that thinks that your differences are beautiful? Like their friend's question was weird. The way that it made them look at their relationship and be like, huh, what hobbies do cross over? All of your hobbies don't need to cross over. Are you spending time at home? Are you being intentional with your relationship? Are you still finding things to do that you enjoy? Does a walk around the block, does a walk at the park count as a hobby? Like, does going to dinner and having a date night count as a hobby? Like, why does it have to be so activity based? It feels like Josh and Jalen are like people who plan excursions for hotels and retreats. Like, they're just very excursion minded. And I want Jalen to go back to when a hobby for her was watching like 90210 or Criminal Minds on TV. Whatever she said she watched, I want her to go back to that. Okay? Because this conversation was very weird. Yeah, like I don't understand why it's such a big deal that they both like music, but they like different kinds of music. Megan and Derek babysit for her friend's three kids because that's how many kids Derek was envisioning them having. And things go seemingly well. I don't really have any thoughts about this. I think it's a good idea for them to, yeah, babysit. I think Derek's going to learn very quickly that babysitting might be fun to see Megan in action, but having children that you're responsible for is a completely different story. I also think that unless he's planning to be like a stay at home dad, I'm not saying that Derek won't be a good dad. It seems like he will be. But I think that there's a lot of expectation for the wife to like care for those three kids and then him just get to come home and have like fun time and do meals together and then go to their sporting events and show up at times outside of his work day. You know, I don't think Megan strikes me as someone who would be home all of the time. Right? She's 38. She has an established career. She works with her family. She kind of seems like she takes after her mom. I definitely think that she has. I think it would be so horrible for people to say that she doesn't have like maternal instinct. I do. And I also think she wants to be a mother. But I don't necessarily think that she's going to drop every passion and career goal that she has to stay at home and just look after three children constantly. Nor do I think that she wants to commit to going through labor three separate times. Nor do I think that Derek is really going to want to have all of that chaos around him. I think that things will change for them. And, uh, objectively, subjectively, whatever it is, in my opinion, right now, it's sad, but they're like almost one of the most solid couples. Rhonda and Pat are draining to watch. Will and Brittany, we feel like we're on eggshells. Jalen and Josh are just frustrating because it's the same conversation over and over. And yeah, Megan and Derek started off very rocky, and we're kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop with these pregnancy hormones, but arguably they're the strongest couple out of every couple that we're seeing right now. So, the next thing that happens is we see inside of Will and Brittany's apartment as he's getting ready to leave for his work trip. She tells him that she appreciates him, wants to spend forever with him. They kiss and hug. He pulls her closer. This is a sweet moment. And again, I take what I can get and try to enjoy it because it just can't help but feel like another pointed conversation is coming sometime after. I will be honest though, at this point in the episode, I did start to think that maybe they were making enough progress and have let down enough walls that maybe we were starting to turn in the opposite direction and they were understanding each other more. That's what I thought. Now, Pat goes to lunch with the worst friend that he could have called, Adrian. This rivals Anton's decision to bring his friend Joe to meet Allie on Love is Blind. And by the way, if you guys did not hear Jessie Woo's episode with all five Black women from this season of Love is Blind, it was very interesting to learn that one of the women's relationship ultimately fizzled out with Anton because he told her that she had to vote the same way as him, Republican, and that even if she did vote Democrat, his vote would cancel hers out anyways. So there's really no point for her to do that. I think it was Kaylin he said that to. So, anyways, that's crazy. But going back to this show, right? Pat goes to lunch with his friend Adrian, and initially he starts off the conversation venting about the relationship, getting an opportunity to not have Rhonda there and just kind of express how he's felt in the process, both sadness, hurt, pain. And seemingly Adrian's validating him. And I thought that when Rhonda showed up, that Adrian was going to be very forward and have his back. And the exact opposite happened. In fact, I left this lunch, and you tell me how you guys felt in the comments, but I left this lunch feeling like Adrian almost wanted to take Rhonda out after this experience, and Rhonda almost wanted to switch partners and say to production, see, that's the type of person that I needed, like Adrian. It was very, very weird. His friend tells him that he needs to feel safe and he needs to feel like everything will crumble. And yet, when Rhonda shows up and she starts into how Pat's been making her feel unheard, and then he will switch topics, like when she shares what a song reminds her of. He adds his perspective, and his friend basically says, "You're an idiot. You shouldn't be making that about you." And that was stupid behavior. Rhonda walks off visibly upset from this conversation and this affirmation. And I think that Adrian tried to play his cards wrong. Like, if I'm being honest, do I really think he wanted to take Rhonda out? Not really. I think he thought that he would calm Rhonda down by being the person that validates her, but he doesn't know Rhonda, and you should have just supported your friend. You should have just either sat there and ate your food or supported your friend, because you really riled her up and kind of vindicated all of this resentment that she's had towards Pat. And then she goes to production. She's like, Adrian gets it in about 5 minutes. Adrian understands immediately. Like, does Adrian understand, or is he placating you? I think that he's able to understand because he's not waterboarded with your endless complaints, critiques, and ways that you could do things better, quite frankly. So, is that how the episode ends? No. The episode ends with Belinda going to Jalen's apartment to talk about her dinner last night, Chad's claims that he texted Josh and that Josh felt the same way as Chad, that production was driving a wedge between everyone. And Jalen's like, no, I saw their text messages. That's not what happened. And I just want to say that while that may be true, and I do kind of feel like Chad fabricated that to add some weight to what he was saying, they could have had a conversation on the phone. It's older as well, okay? Like, he's a boomer. There's a lot of people who say email and mean text. There's a lot of people who say text and mean call. Him and Josh could have 100% had that conversation, and maybe Josh just didn't want to own up to it, the same way that Josh hasn't been honest about anything, right? Now, Belinda ends up noting the red flags that she has and feeling this urge to step back in the relationship. And like I said, this is where it just starts to get a little bit annoying. I'm glad that they have each other to lean on for support, but it's almost like because of that, like Belinda, I don't know. It's not that neither of them are diving into their relationships. Tell me in the comments how to articulate this, but it just feels odd. It just feels odd. Now, let's do episode 12. Screw it, right? Drink your coffee, drink your water. Make sure you've liked this video. Make sure you've engaged with the podcast. Let's keep going. I am at 99.9 thousand followers on TikTok. If you can help me get to that 100,000, I can't wait to celebrate with you guys. Head over to TikTok. Married at First Sight, episode 12. Today's episode of Positively Uncensored is brought to you by Audible. Audible gives you access to thousands of audiobooks, podcasts, and originals all in one place. I love it because as much as I make time to binge reality TV, I always wish I had more time for my ever-growing TBR list. But life and life's responsibilities always seem to get in the way of sinking into a good book. I'm sure that some of you, if not most of you, can relate. With Audible, I can finally catch up on the books that have been on my TBR list while I'm driving to work, cooking, or even in the shower. If you've been meaning to read more but can't find the time, listening with Audible makes it easy. You can try it out for free by heading to the details in the description. And when you do, you're also supporting the show. Now, let's get back to the episode. Megan and Derek, I was right. They did not tell her parents yet. They break the news to her parents that she's pregnant by gifting her mom the 2 pregnancy tests in this cute little box that says "Our Next Adventure." Her mom opens it up, and she before she even opens it, actually, she's like, "I know exactly what this is, Megan. I would be excited if you weren't such a jokester." And she already knows that it's going to be a pregnancy test, and she doesn't believe Megan. Now, this gives away that Megan wasn't lying when she said she was a prankster, because to the point where her mom genuinely thought that this pregnancy announcement was a joke. Like, I need a list of all of the prior jokes that Megan has pulled for her to think that this would be a joke. Like, that's kind of like a sick joke. But anyways, her parents tell her and Derek how their entire life is going to change, but they are happy for them. And yeah, that's pretty much the end of that. Moving on to Rhonda and Pat, who have dinner, and she asks Pat why he struggles to be himself with her, because that is something that came up during the dinner, I think with Adrian. Pat explains that it's not just her, his family dynamic, pleasing his dad, then pleasing his kids, then pleasing his wife, has led to him just not really knowing himself. And I think that this makes sense. I do. I think that if the majority of your life you are a people pleaser, I think it makes sense that you don't have a real true sense of self, because you don't really necessarily know what you enjoy. And I just want to say, Pat, that's who you are being right now to survive in this relationship. He has been people pleasing. I said it since very early in their relationship. And again, I'm using the word survive this relationship intentionally, because I do think Pat has been dealing with hurt and anxiety and a lot of emotion is in this experience, because Rhonda is draining and badgering. She is. Now, Belinda and Chad have a phone session with a therapist whom we're not familiar with, where they talk about what happened the other night, Belinda's issue with Chad expressing things on her behalf, also just feeling like Chad lied. And the therapist asks if Belinda can accept that Chad wasn't intentionally lying, and if Chad can accept that it's not personal for production to have to move their schedules around. Why wasn't this therapist here in person? It doesn't feel like the experts have been available this season to them. I don't think we got any phone calls on the honeymoon when multiple couples honestly could have benefited even at that point. And we just haven't seen any FaceTime with the experts and these couples, more than just very small conversations, like not for the real meat of their issues. Finishing up with the therapist, they end up seemingly decide to move things forward, and she's like, like, I want to go through this entire experience, blah blah blah. Okay, now Will and Brittany have a boat date. They talk about how they are at a 180 from where they were the last time they were on the boat. And eventually it turns south by reading into what Will is saying: commitment versus obligation. No, commitment on obligation versus commitment because of feeling. And they kind of have a debate on why they're committed to this process. And it was such a cute moment just moments before that. Again, I get it for Brittany. I do. I get it. Will has not made her feel sure this entire experience. And that can weigh on you enough that it's hard to be present and enjoy a good moment. But yeah, like this constant, like taking a moment to the past or to a heavy conversation, it just really like steals the light out of the moment. And we can tell that Brittany feels guilty when she does this, but she almost can't help herself. Will expresses that he feels discredited, and like no matter how he shares things to Brittany, he doesn't say it the way that she wants. And unfortunately, I'm going to agree there. Brittany has every right to experience love the way that she feels loved, right? And Will has every right to express love the way that he expresses love. Like, really, there's a huge incompatibility here. She wants him to show her love in the exact way that she receives it, and he's not able to do that. That's not natural for him. They are incompatible. Point, period. End of story. There's nothing else to say. It's not like that Brittany is the villain because she's feeling insecure because of Will. And I don't necessarily think that Will is the villain in this particular conversation, right? Because I do think he's been cold at times intentionally. Um, and I do think he knew earlier in this experience how he was feeling. But in these moments, he's not wrong for feeling critiqued for sharing things because that's what's happening. Simultaneously, she's not wrong for maybe what's not being said, maybe not feeling like what he was saying was genuine, or maybe like his actions matched that. But, we were doing so well. Like, seemingly he's going off to his work trip and you guys are having a moment. This was a cute date. I thought we were heading in a positive direction. It's just unfortunate. So that's why I would rather chalk it up to they're incompatible. I'm not going to act like I didn't see some effort from Will. I did, perhaps a bit too late. I don't know. Derek and Megan go car shopping to look at minivans and other potential cars that can hold what seems like a gaggle of children. Megan wants a car that she knows is going to be sturdy and keep them safe. And this was a cute little fast moment to see. We see a shot of Jalen playing axe throwing with who knows whose friends. Again, very activity based. Have you guys ever sat down and watched a football game? I don't know. Am I crazy? Am I a bad friend? Like, can we sit here and watch some TV? Maybe have some snacks? I don't know. Brittany and Will play volleyball together. Belinda goes to meet up with Chad after spending the night at her place because they decided to take a pause, a little brief absence of separation, if you will, so that Belinda could get her thoughts collected. Basically, she didn't want to be around Chad's ass and she wanted to have Lovey in the bed where Lovey wanted to be. The episode ends with every couple prepping for their decision days, and Will calling Brittany to tell her in the middle of her getting her makeup done that he is going to be saying no. Brittany is upset, but saying that she's trying not to crash out about this. She also can't help but feel like Will isn't even confident saying this, so she doesn't know whether she should fight for the relationship. Don't. Okay. The rumors about all 5 couples saying yes better be a fucking lie. Belinda and Chad, you're out. Rhonda and Pat, you're out. Jalen and Josh, you're out. Megan and Derek, I hope you guys can work things out. And you have the best shot at this point. I'm sorry. I don't want to see most of these couples together. Now, at one point in the episode, Megan did talk about how her and Derek, even if things don't work out, they can still co-parent together. And a couple of things. One, yes, that's mature. That is the reality of the decision. However, it felt like Megan was kind of saying that as like a last stake to her independence to kind of tell Derek, I don't want you to be in this relationship just because we now have a child that we're going to bring into this world. Like, I still want you to want to be in this relationship because you want to be with me. I think a piece of that was about protection because I do think that Megan loves Derek. I do. And that's another thing. We haven't seen the couple's love stories this season. We have seen fight after fight after fight to the point where if we get to decision day and they say, look, things were actually a lot better than you guys saw. We just showed you the fights. Everybody says yes. Fuck you guys. I don't want to see that. I want to see like you're leading me to believe that this isn't their edit, right? Like, this is the tone of each couple's relationship. So you're summarizing that with the pieces that you've shown. So yeah, nobody should say yes except for Megan and Derek. Like, nobody should say yes to each other. Tell me what you're thinking. Decision day is this Thursday. I will be coming back later in today, Monday, to record another episode about the overall themes and just like a mini episode on selling OC. No shot. I'm going to sit here and do an episode by episode recap. They don't deserve that. I hopped around. So I'm going to give you guys what happened this season, overall themes from the season, questions I'm left with, and just an overall thought on what this says about Orange County, Netflix, reality TV in general. I'm also going to be talking about BravoCon. I'm on episode 10 of Secret Life of Mormon Wives. Thank you to every person who voted on my Instagram story. I will not be doing an episode by episode recap. Thank God. Again, kind of similar, right? Right? Do I want to give them that much attention? I'm going to do a mini on that with what happened this season, overall themes that I saw on the show, problems. Yeah, I'm going to give you guys all of my thoughts and analysis. So stay tuned for that. Southern Charm starts this week on Wednesday. Will you be watching? Tell me if I'm missing anything. I did a vote to see if anybody wants me to cover Parabus, Palermus, whatever the new show is. You know if you know. And everybody pretty much said no. Let me know what you're watching, how your weekends were, and everybody, thanks so much for tuning in to Positively Uncensored. Make sure you've liked this video, and if you have a hype left, hype me up.